I've worked in various healthcare facilities over the years, but before my current job, I had a short stint at a long-term care center about 40 minutes from my apartment. I was already used to dealing with elderly patients, so this wasn't anything unfamiliar. I'd only been at that center a couple of weeks before I realized I wouldn't stay much longer. This happened on my second to last shift. I was covering the overnight hours and barely functioning on 2 hours of sleep. That night, I was assigned to the dementia wing. Most of the patients there found my presence comforting. I was in my mid-20s and they seemed to gravitate toward me, someone who grounded them in the present moment. Without someone like that, their minds would just drift into confusion. One resident, however, stood out. Her name was Ruth. This was my first night taking care of her, and she kept telling me about voices whispering in her ears and a dark figure that stood silently in the corner of her room. The other woman who shared the room had asked that her curtain be pulled shut before the shift started, clearly wanting no part of Ruth's nighttime episodes. That roommate rarely spoke, though she always smiled at me. By 11 p.m., most of the wing was asleep, but not Ruth. Every time she buzzed me, she was trembling, rambling about the man she claimed was watching her from the corner. I'll admit, it made my skin crawl. Even though I assumed she was hallucinating, I sympathized. Whatever she believed she was seeing must have been terrifying. I didn't want to disturb the roommate, so I didn't turn on the TV. Instead, I held Ruth's hands and spoke to her gently. Told her she was safe, that I was there. She eventually relaxed, and the next time I checked in, she was fast asleep. Things slowed down once the wing was quiet. Time felt like it moved backward. Around 1 a.m., I was restocking supplies in the utility closet. The room was tiny, dead silent, and I'd shut the door behind me. That's why I was startled when I heard a soft sound. I paused, looked around, saw nothing. I went back to arranging the supplies. That's when I felt it. What could only be described as a hand gripping my shoulder. I turned sharply, heart in my throat, but nothing was there. I was alone, but I know what I felt. Pressure. A weight. My breath caught. I stepped into the hallway, looked both ways. No one. Trying to shake it off, I finished loading my cart. As I turned toward the door, my heart stopped. A man dressed in black stood on the other side of the small window in the door, smiling at me. I dropped everything and screamed. The scream must have echoed down the entire hallway. Seconds later, a fellow nurse burst in and helped me up off the floor. She asked what happened, and I frantically asked if she'd seen the man at the door. "What man?" she asked. "There's no one here." She and I checked the entire ward. Not a single person unaccounted for. No black clothing, no one unauthorized. The screaming had woken Ruth. When I went in to check on her, she began to speak about the voices, about screaming she'd heard. She had no idea they were mine. I asked her what the man she saw looked like. "Was he smiling?" I asked. Her face changed. For the first time, she looked lucid, clear. "How did you know?" she whispered. Then she screamed, "He's coming! Get me out of here!" Nurses rushed in to calm her. I was reassigned to another wing, and I left early that night, shaken to my core. I texted my manager the next day and told her the next shift would be my last. I just couldn't go back. The experience had rattled me too deeply. I've never been diagnosed with anything, never had a hallucination before. I know sleep deprivation can mess with your head, but that was beyond exhaustion. The cold grip on my shoulder, the man at the door, and the way Ruth described him exactly as I saw him. It was one of those rare, terrifying, unexplained events. And I hope it stays that way. Once in a lifetime. About 3 years back, I came down with a severe case of viral encephalitis. I live in coastal Georgia, and there hadn't been any known outbreaks, so I have no idea where or how I got infected. The symptoms hit hard and fast: splitting headaches, confusion, nausea, fatigue. But what scared me most were the hallucinations. One afternoon, lying in bed while my wife was at work, I clearly heard a little girl's voice call out, "Daddy," from downstairs. "We don't have any children." Panicked, I dragged myself out of bed and leaned over the railing to look down the staircase. I called out my wife's name, even though I knew she wasn't home. My head throbbed so badly, I stumbled back into bed. A few minutes later, I heard the same voice again, only this time it whispered, "Where are you?" Terrified, I grabbed my phone and called my wife. I was borderline incoherent as I explained I thought I was hearing things and begged her to come home. She could hear how distressed I was and immediately left work to take me to the ER. As I was changing out of my pajamas, I ran to the bathroom and vomited violently. While hunched over, I heard yet another voice. This one sounded closer, just outside the bathroom door. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew I was losing my grip on reality. At the hospital, I was diagnosed quickly and admitted. The doctor told me I was lucky to come in when I did. If I'd waited any longer, the virus could have caused lasting damage, or worse. My wife stayed with me for a few hours, but eventually had to go home for the night. The nurse told me to buzz if I needed anything. Despite feeling like hell, I managed to fall asleep quickly. What followed was the most vivid dream I've ever had. In the dream, my estranged brother Marcus stood over my bed. He told me he was glad I was okay, said he showed up as soon as he knew my wife had left. He stroked my forehead and told me he'd always resented my wife for ruining the family. Then he leaned close and whispered that he planned to make sure she never saw me again. I often dream about Marcus. Our relationship fell apart after years of tension, but this dream felt eerily real. When I woke up groggy, the chair beside my bed was pulled up close, like someone had been sitting there. It hadn't been like that when my wife left. I chalked it up to a nurse and tried to forget it. In the morning, the day nurse came in and mentioned casually, "Your cousin Marcus came to visit last night. He didn't stay long." I froze. "Marcus isn't my cousin, and he doesn't even live in this state." She paused. "Well, he said his name was Marcus and he was family. Security let him in." I explained the situation to my doctor, who said that while the antibiotics I was on could cause some delirium, the memory of the visit was likely real. My brain just mixed dreams and reality. I texted Marcus later that day, furious. I demanded to know how he found out I was hospitalized and why he'd shown up uninvited. He didn't reply. When I pressed him and mentioned I'd heard everything he said, including the threats, he finally responded. "I never said anything like that. I just came to see if you were okay. You must have been out of it." I told him to stay away from me and my wife, or I'd involve the police. He hasn't contacted me since. I never told my wife what I'd heard Marcus say that night. Honestly, I still don't know if I imagined it or not. After hearing voices the day before and hallucinating conversations, I can't be sure. But either way, Marcus never should have been there. I was discharged a week later and never heard another voice. A couple of years ago, I matched with someone on a dating app. Her name was Kayla. She was chill, confident, had these streaks of blue in her hair, and a full sleeve of tattoos. One of her profile pics was taken on the rooftop of an abandoned mental institution on the outskirts of town. When I asked where it was, she said it was a place she liked to explore at night. Supposedly easy to get into, though occasionally patrolled by one lone cop. She said avoiding him was no big deal. Kayla suggested we go there for our first meetup. I figured why not? It was different, better than some awkward dinner. I picked her up from her house and we drove about 20 minutes to the old hospital. She directed me to park on a deserted cul-de-sac hidden behind tall hedges. From there, it was a short walk. We hopped a barrier and dashed across the cracked parking lot to a busted basement window. She slipped inside first, then helped me through. It was dark, the air stale. We only had our phone flashlights. Kayla clearly knew the place well. She led me through winding corridors, up creaky stairwells. I'll admit, I was already a little nervous. On the first floor, she was talking way too loudly. I almost told her to keep it down. Then we both froze. A metallic thud echoed from a hallway nearby, like a door slamming. We shut off our flashlights and crouched. I whispered, "Is it normal for others to be here?" She replied, "Not really." Then came another bang. Closer. We bolted through the dark, flashlight beams bouncing wildly. Back up the stairs, up 2 more floors. Kayla said it could have been other urban explorers, but there had been no lights, no sounds of footsteps, only the bangs. Then came footsteps from the stairwell below. We ran again, Kayla in front, guiding me like a pro. We reached a rooftop terrace, panting, wide-eyed. After a breather, we climbed through a shattered window into what used to be a large storage room. The ceiling had long, thin wooden beams we could walk across. Below was a 10-foot drop. I hated heights but didn't want to seem scared. I followed her across the beam to a concrete platform where we sat and talked. For a moment, it felt peaceful. Then came the sound. Footsteps below us. We aimed our lights down, and there he was. A man in his 40s, wearing a black beanie and black sweats. He looked up at us with a grin and said, "Come on down." I asked, "Are you with security?" He didn't answer, just kept smiling. "Come on down," he repeated. We scrambled back across the beam, terrified he'd try to follow. Halfway across, we heard a door slam downstairs. He was circling around to intercept us. We ran, down hallways, down another stairwell. But we weren't alone. Doors banged open a few flights above, and heavy boots pounded down after us. We ran like hell, back through the basement, through the broken window. I was terrified he'd grab my leg. But somehow, we made it. Back to the car, doors locked, engine started. We sat there for a long minute, trying to breathe. Then we drove to a 24-hour diner, ordered fries, and talked. Kayla and I stayed in touch for a while. We dated briefly, then just stayed friends. But neither of us ever went near that hospital again.